So thanks everyone for joining us for Demystifying the Teacher's Pension Plan, OTPP for teacher candidates, another webinar in our winter series of OTF Connects, professional learning by teachers for teachers. Acknowledging that we are all joining from different parts across Ontario, we acknowledge that we are gathered in the traditional territories of various Indigenous peoples, and we commit to actively supporting the achievement of the calls to action stemming from the findings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. I'm going to make a prediction that as part of today's webinar that you'll leave with at least either one new learning or one reminder about you and your pension plan. And I'm pretty safe in making that assumption because we have Jeff with us, so I wanted to share a little bit about Jeff. So Jeff is my colleague at the Ontario Teachers Federation. He's the Director of Pension and Economic Affairs. His responsibilities at OTF are focused on the oversight of OTF's involvement in the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, or the OTPP. This includes numerous liaison roles with committees and work groups related to the plan, as well as with government officials and pension regulators and industry stakeholders on a wide variety of issues affecting pensions. Jeff has taught everything from kindergarten to grade 12 and worked as a district teacher and occasional teacher president for OSSTF in Renfrew County for 11 years. But tonight he's with us, or this afternoon he's with us, and we're excited to have you with us today, Jeff. And I'm going to turn over the mic and the screen to you. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Ian, and welcome to everybody tonight. And I'm coming to you from Renfrew, the traditional lands of the Algonquin people. And I'm really excited to be able to provide this opportunity to discuss the pension plan. And we were considering different webinars that we might be able to offer, and I thought this would be a great one because OTF, of course, is responsible for teacher candidates. I'm not saying that this won't be useful for anybody else, but I thought it would be a great start for people, even before they start their career, to get a little taste of what the pension plan is all about. And I'm hoping it's like an appetizer to get you ready for many more courses of workshops throughout your career to learn as much as you can about the pension. Because the sooner you know some of this stuff, the better. But ideally, you're going to keep going back to different workshops throughout your career to learn more things as you progress through your career. So I've got a PowerPoint, but I've also got some advanced technology. And thanks to Ian for encouraging this, we're going to be using Slido. And so Ian will be sharing a link on the screen, but you can use your smartphone, your smart device. And I'm going to share right now. I hope that's up on your screen. So yeah, you can take your smartphone and just take a picture of that QR code in the corner, and it'll take you right there. Or you could switch to another screen, and hopefully we can participate in this virtual poll. Basically, I'm just asking everyone just to get your head around things. Is what one word comes to your mind when you hear the word pension? So we're going to create a bit of a word cloud here if we can get everyone to participate. I'll give you a little chance to do that. If you go to slido.com, and the number you need to enter is there, it's 7685. See, people have already started to take the poll. That's great.
Yeah, we're climbing.
That's awesome. While we're waiting, I want to thank Ian for hosting tonight and helping me out, being in the sidecar, keeping an eye on the chat, and keeping me in line. And of course, Jason's here tonight too. Jason's done a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure the whole OTF Connects is working effectively.
For sure, Jeff. Just as we're also waiting, just a hint that we'll ask you to, if you leave Slido open on your smartphone, if you're able to do that, as when Jeff comes to those slides throughout the deck, and there are a few of them, that will remain open. You'll see the new poll that'll be prompted on your screen. So it's just an easy way. Then you don't have to point it at the slide at the QR code every time, if you are using your smartphone.
Okay, so I'm gonna see where we got. So when people think of pensions, they think of retirement. That's pretty much on the point. And I see money is a second one, I guess, but retirement is the way to go. So it's interesting, right? We're talking about something that's going to happen at the end of your career, but it's so important that we know about it even at this stage in your journey as an educator. So I'm going to move on. So yeah, please keep this open and just to the side somewhere, because we're going to come back. I have a couple more polls I'd like to do with you. Sorry, my goals for the webinar. So again, the Ontario Teachers Federation is here for you before you start your career, because we're involved with the faculties of education, and teacher candidates are associate members of OTF. And we advocate and support teachers throughout their careers, and we continue to advocate for you, hopefully for a very long time after you've retired, because we work with the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. So there are two main goals that I have for this particular webinar, and that is that A, you know more about the pension plan and the role of the OTF in that plan. And more importantly, perhaps for most of you, is to have more confidence about navigating the pension plan, and how different things that happen throughout your career and your life are going to have an impact on your pension. All right, so back to the polls. I'd like you, the next poll should be open for you. So on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 isn't so great and 5 is you're on top of things, how would you rate your current understanding of pensions? So on your Slido, there should be some stars there, and it's either 5 stars or 1 star, and we'll see where people end up. Give it a few more seconds. All right. Well, it's still active here, but most of you are feeling somewhat confident about the pension plan and your knowledge of it. So that's awesome. And hopefully we can move you along this path here and get you a little higher up towards 5 by the end of this particular webinar. Okay, thank you very much for your participation. Probably the most important slide in this whole presentation is this one. And remember too, this whole presentation is being recorded, and this information isn't a secret in any way, shape, or form. But as soon as you get working in education in Ontario, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you're registered with the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. And you can check with them by calling. They operate during normal business hours, and they also have an email address that's right there on the screen. And one of the things that you can gain access to very quickly is there's a secure web service. It's free, and it allows you to access your information 24/7, where you can look at, there's a pension calculator where you can compare your retirement options. You can calculate the cost of buybacks, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And you can even do your application to retire. Everything is online these days, and it's one-stop shopping. But it's really important that you just get yourself registered, and then everything is available to you. So that's really my number one piece of information: register. And then throughout your career, when in doubt, contact the pension plan. It's never a bad thing to call them. Connect with them anytime any major thing happens in your life. When you get married, when you have children, if you move, make sure your contact information is always up to date with the pension plan. And of course, when you're getting ready to retire, it's a good time to be speaking with them as well. But there are some things that also happen in our lives that aren't so wonderful. And those are times when you need to be connecting with the pension plan as well. If you get divorced, or if you lose someone in your family, or you decide you're going to leave teaching before retirement, or if you get very ill. The teacher's pension plan has been around for a very long time. The current version of the pension plan has been around since 1990. It's the largest single profession pension plan in Canada, and we have over $200 billion in assets. So it's a very robust plan, and I'm quite proud of it. I think it's quite an excellent plan. Just a little bit about the structure of the plan. There are two sponsors. It's called a jointly sponsored pension plan. You can replace the word sponsors with partners. So the two pension partners are the Ontario Teachers Federation, which represents the teachers in Ontario, as well the government is the other partner. So the two partners, they work together to change the plan, the terms of the plan, the benefits, the contribution levels. Those things are determined by the sponsors. So the 85 factor that exists in our pension plan, which I'll talk about in a little bit, used to be a 90 factor. There's now an 85 factor. It was a 90 factor. The plan sponsors chose to make some changes to the plan. That's their role. The sponsors or the partners also select the members of the board, and there's 11 members of the board, and the board oversees the plan for us. So OTF and the government are not involved in the daily administration or the investments that the plan makes. That is at an arm's length from our role. Our role is to set up the parameters under which the plan operates, and their job, the pension plan, is to invest that money, get a return, and also look after paying out the pensions to the members when they retire. It's important to note, I think, that roughly 10% of what you will get in your pension check when you finally retire, 10% of that money actually came from the contributions that you make over the course of your career. Another 10% of that pension check that you receive comes from the money that the Ontario government or your employer puts in. And 80%, roughly 80% of the money that you receive in your pension and retirement comes from investment income. So I think that's really important to know, that our pension plan does a lot of work for us. And, you know, one of the questions that people ask at a pension workshop typically is, you know, what is the most important asset that you have in your life, or the most valuable asset, maybe is a better way of framing it. People think of their car or their home, or, you know, some big piece of financial savings. But really, your pension is probably one of your most important assets and one of the most valuable. So I would recommend highly that when we talk about your planning for retirement, that you involve a certified financial planner or advisor. And I'm going to use this little logo. I'll throw it. I'll put it on a number of slides as we go through this presentation as a reminder that this is a good time to maybe consider seeking advice from a financial advisor before you make decisions. The plan has roughly 185,000 active members who are contributing to the plan. And currently we have, I believe it's closer to 143,000 retired members. It's a really good news story when you see some of these numbers for someone who's interested in becoming a teacher, because where the average retirement age is 59, most teachers work on average 26 years where they're paying into the pension plan, but most teachers are on a pension for 32 years. So you can see there's an imbalance there. And I should also highlight, pensioners live a long time in the teacher's pension plan. We have over 100 members currently living, we have 131 members who are over the age of 100. Another thing that I want to highlight is that every year, or currently, the pension plan is paying out about $6 billion in pension payments. And at the same time, those 185,000 members are contributing about $3 billion into the plan. So the plan has to work very hard to make sure that there's enough money to continue to pay those pensions and meet the pension promise. A phrase that gets used that we need to be aware of is the DB pension, or defined benefit pension. The teacher's pension is a DB, defined benefit, meaning that we know what you're going to be receiving for the rest of your life after you retire. There are also defined contribution plans, which determine how much you put into the plan. It doesn't tell you how much you're actually going to get out of it. So a defined benefit is a much more valuable pension. And right now, in today's dollars, when you retire, your pension would be valued at somewhere between $1, maybe even as high as $2 million. That's what I was referring to earlier as one of your most valuable assets. Now, it depends on a number of factors, such as how long you've worked, and et cetera, but it's somewhere between $1 and $2 million. It's very, very significant. To be a member, to contribute to the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, you have to be a member of the Ontario College of Teachers and or working on a letter of permission. If you meet one of those criteria, you become a contributor to the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. If you work for one of the publicly funded school boards in Ontario, or there's 59 designated private schools who contribute to the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. They are found on the OTPP website. If you're interested, if you're looking at working at a private school and would still like to be a participant in this pension plan. And there's also some organizations such as the Teachers Federations. They belong, and the Ministry of Education. They are designated organizations. And if you work there and you're a member of the College of Teachers, you will be paying into our pension plan, into the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. It doesn't matter what role you play within the school system. So if I was to start working tomorrow as an office assistant or a custodian or an early childhood educator, because I am a member of the College of Teachers and I'm working for one of these three categories, a school board or a designated private school or a designated organization, my retirement, my pension contributions would be going towards the teacher pension plan, not any other pension plan. All right. The pension plan, as I said earlier, is got over $200 billion. And the plan has to, by law, every 3 years, file a funding valuation. And I mentioned this in passing because I hear a lot of people are concerned about the health of our pension plan or whether it will be there in the future. And what pension plans do normally is they look way into the future because, especially for teacher candidates, you're starting your career. So you're going to work 26, 30 years. And then after that, you're going to be retired for hopefully a very long time, 30 plus years. So the pension has to know that they're going to be healthy 70 years into the future. So that's what pension plans do. They do a lot of major forecasting into the future. And that's why this funding valuation has to happen periodically so that we can feel very confident that the money is going to be there for at least the next 60 to 70 years. And right now, our plan is doing very well. In fact, it's got more money than it needs in order to meet the needs of our plan over the next 60 to 70 years. So that's good news.
Jeff, you just you were talking there about assets, and previously, you talked about roughly, approximately 80% coming from investments. And Kathy's just asked a question here about what are some of the companies that the pension plan invests in. So I don't know if you want to take a stab at addressing that one, or if you want to wait till the end. Or there's the question for you. So.
Yeah, our pension plan's invested in so many different things and all over the world. In the 90s, the pension plan started moving away from some very low risk bonds. We generally invested in bonds because they're safe and reliable, but they just didn't give the return that other investments do. So our plan actually lists. You can go to the pension plan website and the annual report is found there. And there are a listing of many of the companies that our pension plan is invested in. There are literally thousands, and and we're talking about billions and billions of dollars that are invested in different companies. So, an easy one for me to think of is Cadillac Fairview, but we've just recently started investing in some other companies like Artera Wines. There's just so many. I don't know where I would start and stop, but I don't know if that helps, but there's definitely a list that's available to everybody. It's a publicly available document. Okay, in terms of that money that you contribute, so when you start working for a school board or one of those organizations that I mentioned, there's two levels of contribution rates. So currently, the yearly maximum pensionable earnings, which is set by the federal government, is $61,600. So what our plan does is for the first $61,600 that you earn, 10.4% of your income goes towards the pension. Once you earn over $61,600, they deduct 12% of your income, and that's what goes into your pension, and it averages out to about 11%. Remember as well that the government matches your contributions that go into the pension. The pension formula is pretty straightforward. It's a 2% formula. So it means that for every full year that you work, you get a credit year. So the equivalent of 194 days of teaching. And you multiply that by 2%. So if you work for 30 years and your salary was $100,000 of your best 5 years, so it doesn't have to be your last 5 years, it just has to be your best 5 years. So in this example, it's a very simple example. $100,000 is what your average of your best 5 years are. First example, you work for 30 years, it's 30 times 2, you get $60,000 would be your annual pension. If you work for 35 years, now you're up to $70,000. So that's just a simple example of how the pension formula works and what you will receive in retirement. Now, it's important to understand what a credit year is. So it's the actual number of years that you work in the plan or partial years. And it includes any buybacks or transfers. And we'll talk about those later. But essentially, a school year is 194 days. So if you work 190, you will not get a full year of credit years. So just I'll highlight that because there's another kind of year that I have to explain. So if you've taught half-time for 10 years, in terms of credit, you would earn, actually, somebody, Ian will ask them to maybe throw it into the chat. If I was to teach half-time for 10 years, how many credit years would I have?
Yeah, so folks can feel free to chat to put that into the chat box.
Fire something into the chat. Anybody at all?
Judith was first and the only one so far that I can see there with 5.
Well, what'd she say?
5.
And she's
Kathy
right.
with 10.
Bang on. No, for credit years, your credit years are earned by the actual number of days that you work. So if you worked half-time, you didn't work the full 194, so you're only given credit for half. So you've worked half-time for 10 years, you get 5. Now, there's a different number that we need to consider, and that's a qualifying year. And a qualifying year is a little different because while you got 5 years credit years, qualifying years count towards your 85 factor, and that's where they're important. And a qualifying year right now, if you work if you work 10 days in a year, the plan gives you credit towards a qualifying year. If you work half the year, obviously you've gone past 10 days, you get a full year towards the 85 factor. And we'll come back to the 85 factor. But you still only get 5 credit years. And there's a great way to think about this. If you imagine 2 teachers starting out their careers together, they're twins, one works half-time, the other works full-time. After 10 years, one has 10 years of qualifying years, the other has 10 years qualifying, but one has 10 years of credit and the other has 5, because one worked half-time and one worked full-time. I hope that helps. And we'll get back into 85 factors as well. So the 85 factor is important because, these are important terms. I often hear people say the phrase, I'm going to retire with a full pension. We do not have a quote unquote full pension. The teacher's pension plan offers an unreduced pension or a reduced pension. So you can retire anytime after you reach the age of 50, but there is going to be a reduction to your pension depending on how old you are and how much you have taught, how many qualifying years you've earned. So if you've not reached your 85 factor, there's a reduction of 2.5% from each point away from the 85 factor. And if you haven't hit age 65, there's a reduction of 5% for every year you're under the age of 65. Now they look at both calculations and they'll take the smaller one. But the 85 factor is a very important number. And actually, before I get back here, I went too quickly, my apologies. So yeah, and there's that financial advisor icon that I told you about earlier. Again, if you're ever considering your retirement, you need to have a conversation with your financial advisor about where you stand and where your finances. So to calculate your 85 factor, you use your age, your qualifying years, and you add them together and you get your factor. So I'm going to use me as an example here. Okay, so let's say I'm 51, which I am, and I've worked for 27 years. So those 27 years could be full-time years, as well as years where I worked just 10 days in a year. So if I was working occasionally and I got 10 days, that still counts as a year. Or if I worked half-time or 3/4 time, I can get a full year for that in qualifying years. So 51 plus 27 gets me to 78. So I'm going to just, my age is 51, my qualifying years, I have 27, and my factor is 78. So I want to hit the 85 factor because when I get to the 85 factor, I do not have a reduction to my pension. So how much longer am I going to have to work in order to achieve an 85 factor and an unreduced pension? So I'm going to ask you to fire off a number in the chat, if you could. How many more years?
Sorry, Jeff, before we do that, I'm going to suggest one thing, that we try this waterfall chat feature.
Okay. Oh, okay. Good idea.
Yeah. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do right now is, if you go to your chat box and stretch the chat box from the top of your screen to the bottom, do that first so that you have, it'll be a really tall chat box now. And then what I'm going to ask everyone to do is to answer Jeff's question, but don't press enter or return yet until Jeff tells you to, and then we'll see all the waterfall of answers in the chat box all at once. Okay, so I hope that's clear. So stretch your chat box from top to bottom of your screen, and here's the question again from Jeff, and just wait until Jeff says to press enter, and then we'll see all the answers. Go ahead.
All right. So
here you go, Jeff.
Okay, ready? The question was, how many more years do I have to work in order to hit my 85 factor with those numbers? If I'm 51 and I've taught for 27 qualifying years. So 3, 2, 1, go. Cool. Very cool. So I won't keep you in suspense any longer. The answer is, oh, sorry, by the way, the pension plan calculates your age and all of these numbers to 4 decimal places. So my age today, I checked today, and my age is 51.3699, just in case anybody thought I looked a lot younger than 51. I'm a little older, but it's 3.5. So after 3.5 years, I would then be at 54 and a half years of age, and I would be at 30 and a half years of qualifying years, which would add up to 85. Okay. So, a trick question that I could ask you is, what's my pension? Well, the pension, we have to go back to that other formula, and I have to use my credit years. And credit years are different from qualifying. Buybacks are important. A buyback is when you can buy back time that you didn't teach. And so some clear examples are anytime you take an employer approved leave of absence, an ELA. So you take a year off to travel, you take a year off to go to school. There's many different reasons why an employer might approve it. But if the employer does approve your leave of absence, or if you take a maternity, parental, or a leave, while you're not working, you can choose to continue to pay into your pension plan. And it makes a big difference in terms of where you're going to be at the end of your career. Because if you don't pay in, you're not gaining that credit. And that credit has a big impact on the value of the pension that you'll receive. Now, there are limits. You can only take leaves, I believe the Employment Standards Act allows for 5 years of employer approved leaves, and there are deadlines. So typically you have about 5 years to pay back this amount. And the amount right now is roughly about $10,000 a year, going by our calculation earlier of 11% of your income. It's around $10,000. So I always recommend to people to, again, go and see a financial advisor, speak to them about the implications. There's tax implications as well. So there's a lot of things to weigh and consider because it is a significant investment, and whether or not you should do it it's a personal decision. All right, transfers. So you're about to graduate from the Faculty of Education and you get a job teaching in Manitoba or Alberta or British Columbia, but at some point in your life, you're interested in coming back to Ontario and teaching here and finishing your career. You can transfer your pension between different pension plans within this province. So if you've worked in a different career, and now you've switched into teaching, you may be able to transfer your pension over into the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. You can definitely transfer your pension between teaching jobs in different provinces, and other major plans in the province of Ontario have agreements with the Teachers Pension Plan. So you have to contact basically both parties and try and figure out how you can make that work. There's sometimes costs associated with this. I had experience working in Quebec. I transferred that over to Ontario, and it did cost me some money. Again, a financial advisor might be a real important person to speak to about the possibilities and the options available to you. But if you contact the pension plan, they will also give you a lot of support and advice about that process. Okay. One thing I forgot to mention, I actually took advantage. I had some RRSPs, and because there was a cost, because the Teachers Pension Plan in Ontario is a little bit, well, it's quite a bit more robust, we'll say, than the pension plan that I was leaving in Quebec. So there was a cost for me to get the equivalent time in Ontario. If I took the money from Quebec and transferred it over, there was a gap there that had to be filled, and I used RRSPs because it was already registered. It didn't have to come out of my bank account. I mean, I lost the RRSPs, but I think in the long run I gained. But again, that's something to discuss with a financial advisor. One really important thing to do, and it should be highlighted at every pension workshop that you go to, is that you need to list a beneficiary other than your spouse. So when you fill out your paperwork, you can actually change this information online nowadays, but you need to make sure that your beneficiary is somebody other than your spouse. Because the way the law operates, the pension plan, if you were to die before you retire, they look at whether or not you have a spouse, a living spouse, and if you do, your lump sum or a possible deferred pension can go to that spouse, will go to that spouse. If there is no spouse, then they look for dependent children, under 18 or under 25 if they're still in school full time. And if that doesn't work out, then they look for a beneficiary. And if there is no beneficiary, then it goes to your estate. But it's really important to, two things really. Number one, make sure that it's not your spouse. And number two, there are pre-retirement survivor benefits. So I like to think of your pension plan as sort of another form of life insurance, because you're contributing money over the years. And as we found out earlier, it can be quite significant when you finally get to the end of your career. So that's a large sum of money that's available potentially to the folks that you leave behind if you're to pass away prior to retirement. So that's something to consider. And I would again advise you to speak to a financial advisor about some of these things if they were to come up. I would definitely leave that kind of information in your will, that they should contact the pension plan, and there should be some conversations about how that money gets used or potentially used. The Ontario Teachers Pension Plan has had inflation adjustment for a very long time. Essentially, every year the pension plan looks at the cost of living, and this past year it was calculated as 1%. So everybody on the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan who's retired and receiving a pension currently received a 1% raise on their pension this year. 1% doesn't sound like a lot, but that apparently was the cost of living adjustment. There is also a maximum. The maximum that the pension plan will pay out in any given year is 8%. I don't know if that's happened for a very long time. I will say it's also conditional. So anybody who started working in or post 19, I'm going to get the year wrong, 1990, no, 2010 is subject to inflation adjustment. Sorry, it's right there on my screen. It's 2013. Essentially, if the pension plan isn't doing very well, and as I said earlier, the pension plan is doing well, there is a potential that some of that indexation will not be given out in a particular year, but the plan will catch up as things get better. CPP offset.
Jeff, just before you go on, it's just because it was the slide actually before that, or when you were talking about beneficiary, and there's a it's a good question in the chat box. Where do we fill out that information about beneficiaries? It's a good question to ask.
Yeah, when you first register for for many things, you'll be asked to list a beneficiary. When you start working for a school board, you'll have to fill out forms for life insurance. And it's the same when you register with the pension plan. They will ask you to identify a beneficiary. And if you already are a member of the plan, you can call the number that I mentioned at the top, as well as going online, and the member service platform is also another place where you can do that.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, no, thank you. Okay, CPP offset. So everyone, well, not everyone, but most people in Canada are going to be looking at receiving a Canada pension plan benefit, a pension in your older years, I suppose. At age 65, it's important to understand. I get phone calls about this, so I'm telling you now, so you will not be calling my successor in 30 years. What's going on with my pension? My pension check just got reduced. Well, what happens is, because the Canada Pension Plan is coming in into your wallet, the teacher pension is actually reduced by an amount that's actually less than what the Canada Pension Plan should be. So I just want to make sure that that's highlighted. A number of pension plans do this, where there's this integration. It's also called bridging. Essentially, paid a smaller amount up to the yearly maximum pensionable earnings, and you paid more above that. And that's because, instead of paying 12% on your whole income, that's how it's tied to this. We could have paid 12% on the entire income, but this offset recognizes that the Canada Pension Plan is going to be coming in at some point in your life, and therefore you're going to be paying less on that first amount of money, that yearly maximum pensionable earnings. So just so everybody's aware. I don't want to talk about separation or divorce, but the reality is these things happen. And it's important that if that kind of thing happens in your life, that you, again, reach out to the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan to let them know, because there is stuff that has to happen. And the portion of your pension that you accumulate during the period of your marriage, and that is a joint asset, and it has to be costed, and the pension plan will do some of that work for you if you get into that situation. All right, commuted value. You're allowed to receive a commuted value up till the age of 50. Our pension plan allows you to take a pension after you turn 50. So you can only take a commuted value up to the point at which you turn 50. So if you leave teaching prior to 50, you can choose to take a lump sum that you've contributed to the plan. And there's some calculations associated with that. I would highly recommend that you speak to a financial advisor before even considering something like that. You must be terminating your employment and education. And there are some circumstances where, if there's a terminal illness, where you can get a commuted value. But normally, I think many advisors would suggest that you hang on and wait for a pension and get that guaranteed pension that's going to be there for the rest of your life, plus the cost of living adjustments, plus survivor benefits, et cetera. Something I just want to mention, I know a lot of teachers when they start in their career, and I know in the last little while there's been a lot of labor unrest in Ontario in education. I want to give a sense of reassurance that teacher unions pay the pension buyback for teachers. If a teacher is on strike during one of their best 5 years, or what would have been one of their best 5 years, that's going to impact their credit for that year. So the unions will pay that missing fund, that buyback, and they're allowed to do that. And they'll do that for any period, a lockout period that affects your best 5 years. So I like to mention that, because some teachers get stressed about that. I don't want to go on strike because it's going to impact my pension. There is not going to be an impact on your pension. And you don't have to do anything. I just want you to know that. Okay, leaves. Anytime you do take a leave, as we mentioned earlier, an approved leave, you can buy back. But there are some leaves you don't have to worry about. If you're on a sick leave and you're still receiving sick leave payments, pension is looked after. Your pension contributions come off of your sick leave payments. If you take an unpaid leave, some boards have special leave. If it's less than up to 5 days, no impact on your pension. But if you're on a leave and it's more than 5 days in a row, you're going to have to buy back those days. And again, as I said, a whole year costs $10,000 approximately, or maybe a little bit more. A day isn't going to cost a whole lot, but after a number of weeks, it can start to accumulate and be quite expensive. There is a buyback center online. If you go to the website, you can do some calculations to see how much that'll cost. But you can always contact the pension plan to see what options you have available to you. All right, so we're coming to the end. I'm going to give you a few things, what I call my best pieces of advice. And I don't know if you have any of your own, you can certainly share them. But let's go through some of my best pieces of advice. So as I said right at the beginning, register as soon as you can with the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. Keep your information up to date at all times of the plan. If you're going to be moving, let them know where you are so they can find you. Register for that pension calculator, that whole online service. It's, many teachers call it their happy place. They like to go there and do their little math and do different scenarios. If I retire tomorrow, what does that look like? As soon as you can, move to the top category. Get to the very top category as quickly as you can, because that's going to benefit you both in terms of your pension and your salary at the time, right? Often moving to that top grid placement is going to be great at the time, but it's, think of your pension in the long term. I'm going to probably open things up for questions, but I'm going to come back to the questions. First, though, I'd like you to do one more Slido poll for me, please. And that is this one. So the same question that we had at the beginning, where most of you came in around 3, I'm hoping that we moved you a little bit. So same question, but at the end of this workshop, where I've tried to take you through, and I know we went through pretty quickly, but I'm hoping that you picked up some nuggets along the way. And as I said, I hope this is an appetizer to get you interested in going to more workshops throughout your career. So we'll see.
Jeff, I'm going to just interject here just to remind folks that if you're on your smartphone and on Slido, if you'd make sure that you enter these in the poll section, not the Q&A. There's 2 different sort of tabs there, so just make sure you're doing that in the active poll. Thanks.
Now I'll give it a few more seconds, and then we can see where people ended up. All right, I think we'll see. All right, good. We moved to 4. This is good. This is very good. Thank you. That's great. That's gratifying to see that. Okay, so I'll go back to questions, and I'll turn off this slide. Go. And people can turn on their cameras, turn on their microphones.
Jeff, okay. just before you do that, I'm going to share my screen. So just give me a moment there, please. So I'll just take an opportunity here. I'm going to put these links in the chat box, but I want to thank, first of all, take the opportunity to officially thank Jeff for sharing his wisdom, and expertise and passion for pensions with us this afternoon. I think, Jeff, this is fair to say that your passion for pensions probably matches the other P, which is podcasts. So I think that's true. I know that. And that includes today, that every time I talk to you about pensions, I learn something new, some important tidbit. I know members are lucky to have you at OTF. I know I value all the knowledge and expertise that you bring in this area, and your passion for it certainly comes through, I think, today, and certainly in conversations too. So we're fortunate to have you at OTF overseeing this and keeping things moving along and in the right direction. So I want to take that opportunity to thank you for all your time today and all the preparation to put this together. For all of you who are joining today, thanks also for carving out the time to talk about this really important topic in your personal and professional lives, and one that often is overlooked, sometimes until really late in the career. And as Jeff always says, and said here again, it's never too early to start having those conversations and to think about it, and always with a financial advisor in the sidecar there too. So I will post these links in the chat box before folks leave. We'll just ask you to take a few moments to do the evaluation form, and then in the next few days, our staff colleague will send you a follow-up email with the link again to the evaluation form, and also the archived version of this webinar. And so with that, I'll stop sharing, and people can stay behind to ask their questions. I know Jeff has agreed graciously to stay behind for another 15 minutes or so. So we'll stop the recording here, and then folks can ask their questions. Thanks, everyone.